Hi everyone, I'm Mark Duiker, developer advocate at Diagrid, where we enable developers to build and run high-scale modern applications using open source technology such as Dapr. In this video, I'm taking a look at the latest release of Dapr, version 1.10, which was released earlier this month. The release contains a lot of new features and improvements, and in this video I'll highlight just a few things that I find most interesting. Here we're looking at the blog post I wrote. The link's in the description. It contains all the relevant links to the Dapr documentation, so definitely check this out. Let's start with the first highlight, and that's Dapr Workflow. It's a completely new building block that allows developers to orchestrate their business logic across various microservices. It's ideal for multi-step processes that are present in every business, like order processing, HR onboarding, and so on. The workflow engine is built into Dapr, so you don't need anything else, although you can also use other external workflow engines. So let's have a brief look at the overview. There's a note that it's currently in the alpha stage, so don't use it for production yet, but definitely start using it and give feedback to the maintainers on what's working well and what isn't working well. Again, it mentions that there's a built-in workflow engine. It also has an SDK, so you can easily author the workflows. I'll show you a bit of code in a minute. At the moment, there's a .NET SDK, but other SDKs will follow soon. And in addition, there are also HTTP and gRPC APIs for managing the workflow, like starting and terminating it, querying the status. So if I go back and show a bit of sample code, how to author a workflow. So let's have a look how you can author a workflow very quickly. You author a workflow in code. So in this case, there is a .NET SDK, and they have an example of an order processing workflow that uses 3 different activities for notification, reserving inventory, and the payment process. So here you can see the class definition of the order processing workflow. It inherits from a base class called workflow, which has a certain input type and an output type. Then the run async method is overridden. And inside this method, we can see the different activity calls to the individual activities that this workflow orchestrates. So this is a notify activity, the reserve inventory activity, which then gets a new inventory request. And there's a process payment activity with a payment request, and again, a notification activity. I definitely recommend you to try out the workflow quick start, which is in the documentation. And I'll definitely do some more deep dives on workflow very soon. So expect some more videos on this. The next highlight is Pluggable Components SDKs. Now, Dapr already provides a lot of built-in components for you to work with. So for state management, for pub/sub messaging, and so on. But if you need additional components, or you want to group several components together, or if you want to create a private component, then you can use Pluggable Components. And you could already use any language that supports gRPC to create these components. But now there are Pluggable Component SDKs, which make the creation of Pluggable Components much easier. So the SDKs are available in .NET, in Java, and Go. So it's definitely much easier now to start creating pluggable components. The next highlight is multi-app run. Running microservices locally can be challenging because you need to have multiple applications up and running, so you need to start different Dapr applications. And multi-app run really simplifies this because you only need one command, Dapr run -f, and point to a multi-app run template file. And that template file then contains the instructions which applications need to be run at the same time. So if I scroll down a bit further, here's an example of such a template file with 2 different applications. So each application needs an application ID, an application path, some additional ports if necessary, and of course a command to start the application. So in this case, the template contains a processor application and an emit metrics application. So as soon as you run Dapr run -f and point to this file, it will start up these 2 applications. So this will make it much easier to develop and test locally. The final highlight is actually a list of new components that have been released with version 1.10. There are new state stores, new bindings, and new pub sub-brokers. One of the new state stores is SQLite. It's a small but fast SQL engine that can run locally. It's used very often during development, but it's also used a lot in mobile devices. Another state store is the Cloudflare Workers KV. Cloudflare KV is a global low latency key value store, ideal for high read volume applications. Another update related to Cloudflare is the Cloudflare Q binding spec. So you can use this binding to publish images to Cloudflare queues, which I think is great because then you can use a cloud application and then publish messages to a Cloudflare queue, which then in turn can trigger Cloudflare workers. Another binding is related to KubeMQ. So that's an enterprise-grade Kubernetes-based messaging platform. And you can use this binding both for input binding as well as output binding. The KubeMQ is also available as a pub sub-broker to publish and subscribe messages. And finally, the latest pub sub-broker, which is new, is the Solace AMQP. So Solace Event Broker is a container-based message broker, and it's great for real-time event-driven enterprises. So quite some new components, and I'll do some in-depth videos on most of these components very soon. Coming back to the blog post, I definitely recommend you to read this in full because it also contains information about improvements of components which have now been graduated to the stable level. And in addition, it also links to the official Dapr 1.10 announcement, and that contains even more information. If you have any comments or suggestions about this new release, please feel free to join the Dapr Discord and ask your questions there. And I'll be creating some more videos on the specific new features in this Dapr release, so watch out for that. And I'll see you next time. Bye.